everyone. Welcome back to the English Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Henry, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Sarah. How are you doing today, Sarah?
Hey, Henry, I'm doing great, thanks. And hello to all our listeners out there. We're so excited to have you with us for another episode. Today's topic is something I think every English learner will find super helpful.
That's right, Sarah. Today we're going to talk about why fluency isn't a skill. It's a habit. Now that might sound a bit surprising to some of you, but trust us, by the end of this episode, you'll see how fluency is something you can build step by step, just like any other habit.
Exactly. A lot of people think fluency means speaking English perfectly without any mistakes, but that's not true. Fluency is about speaking naturally, thinking quickly, and feeling confident. And the best way to get there is by building small, daily habits.
That's a really important point. And here's the good news. Anyone can become fluent. You don't need to be born with a special talent for languages. You just need the right mindset, consistent practice, and the willingness to make English part of your daily life.
Yes, and in today's episode, we're going to break it all down for you. We'll talk about why fluency is a habit, how to build those habits, and we'll give you some practical tips you can start using right away.
So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and let's dive in. You're listening to the English Learning Podcast, where we help you build confidence, improve your speaking skills, and have fun learning English. All right, let's get into today's topic. Fluency is a habit, not a skill. But before we dive too deep, Sarah, let's start by asking a basic question. What do most people think fluency means?
That's a great question, Henry. I think a lot of people believe that being fluent means speaking English perfectly, like a native speaker. They think it's all about having a big vocabulary, using perfect grammar, and never making mistakes. But actually, that's not what fluency really is.
Exactly. Fluency is less about perfection and more about communication. It's about being able to speak smoothly, think quickly, and express your thoughts without getting stuck, even if you make a few mistakes along the way.
Right. And here's where the idea of fluency being a habit comes in. You see, fluency isn't a skill you can just learn, like you'd learn a list of grammar rules. It's more like riding a bike or playing a musical instrument. You have to practice it consistently, over and over again, until it becomes automatic.
That's a really good analogy. When you're learning to ride a bike, you don't sit in a classroom and memorize bike riding theories, right? You get on the bike, you fall off a few times, but eventually your brain and body start to work together, and it becomes second nature.
Exactly. And it's the same with speaking English. The more you practice speaking, listening, and thinking in English, the more fluent you become. It's like training your brain to react in English without overthinking.
And that's why fluency is more like a habit than a skill. It's something you build little by little through consistent practice. You don't wake up one day and suddenly become fluent. You get there by doing small things every day.
Yes, and this is great news for English learners because it means you don't have to be perfect or naturally talented to become fluent. You just need to create the right habits and stick with them.
That's such an important point, Sarah. And we'll talk more about how to build those fluency habits in the next part of the episode. But before we move on, let's give our listeners a quick example to explain this idea of fluency as a habit.
Sure. So imagine you want to improve your listening skills. You could turn it into a daily habit by listening to a short podcast in English every morning while you drink your coffee. At first, it might feel difficult. You might not understand everything. But if you keep doing it every day, little by little, you'll start to understand more, and your brain will get used to hearing English.
Exactly. And the same thing applies to speaking. You don't have to give long speeches to practice. You can start with small habits like talking to yourself in English for a few minutes each day. Over time, it becomes easier and more natural.
So the takeaway here is that fluency isn't something you get overnight. It's something you build through small daily actions. And the more consistent you are, the faster you'll improve.
Absolutely. And in the next part of the episode, we're going to give you some specific practical tips to help you start building those fluency habits. So stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. So we've talked about what fluency really means and why it's more like a habit than a skill. Now let's dig deeper into why habits are so powerful when it comes to building fluency. Sarah, why do you think habits are such a game changer for language learners?
That's a great question, Henry. Habits are powerful because they help you practice consistently without even thinking about it. When something becomes a habit, it stops feeling like a chore and starts to feel like part of your normal routine. And consistency is key to becoming fluent.
Exactly. It's like going to the gym. If you work out for 10 hours one day and then skip the gym for the rest of the month, you won't see any real results. But if you work out for 30 minutes every day, you'll start seeing progress over time. The same idea applies to learning English.
Yes, small, daily actions are much more effective than cramming or studying once in a while. And when you create language habits, you're training your brain to think in English automatically, which is exactly what fluency is all about.
That's such an important point. When we build habits, we're actually rewiring our brains. It's called neuroplasticity. The idea that the brain changes and adapts based on what we do repeatedly. So the more you speak, listen to, and think in English, the more your brain gets used to it.
Right. And one of the best things about habits is that they make fluency feel less overwhelming. You don't have to be perfect right away. You just have to focus on doing small things consistently. Over time, those small things add up to big progress.
Exactly. Let's give our listeners a quick example. Imagine you want to improve your speaking fluency. If you make it a habit to talk to yourself in English for just 5 minutes a day, you're going to see a lot more progress than if you only practice speaking once a week for an hour.
Yes, and the best part is that habits make fluency feel automatic. At first, it might feel awkward or difficult, but once it becomes a habit, you won't even have to think about it. You'll just find yourself speaking English naturally.
And this applies to other language skills too. For example, you can build a listening habit by listening to English podcasts while you're driving or cooking. Or you can build a reading habit by reading a short news article in English every morning.
Exactly. The key is to make it easy and enjoyable. If you try to do too much at once, you'll get overwhelmed and give up. But if you focus on small, simple habits that fit into your daily routine, it will be much easier to stay consistent.
That's such great advice, Sarah. So to sum it up, habits are powerful because they help you practice consistently. They train your brain to think in English, and they make fluency feel automatic over time.
Yes, and the best part is anyone can create these habits. You don't need to be perfect or have a lot of free time. You just need to take small steps every day.
Absolutely, and in the next part of the episode, we're going to give you some practical tips to help you start building fluency habits today. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everyone. So far, we've talked about why fluency is a habit, not a skill, and why building habits is the best way to make steady progress in your English learning journey. Now it's time for the fun part, actionable tips. You can start using today to build those fluency habits. Sarah, where should we begin?
Let's start with a tip that's simple but really powerful. Set small, achievable goals. One reason people give up on learning English is that they try to do too much at once. But fluency doesn't happen overnight. It happens when you take small steps every day.
That's so true. So instead of saying, I'm going to study English for 2 hours every day, start with something manageable like, I'm going to practice speaking for 5 minutes a day. It might not sound like much, but over time, those 5 minutes will add up.
Exactly. And once you build that habit, you can gradually increase the time if you want to. The key is to make it easy to get started. And speaking of getting started, here's another tip. Create an English-speaking environment around you.
That's a great one. You don't have to live in an English-speaking country to immerse yourself in English. You can change the language on your phone to English. Listen to English music or podcasts while you're driving, and watch TV shows or movies in English.
Yes, immersing yourself in English like this helps your brain get used to the language, even when you're not actively studying. And that brings us to our next tip. Talk to yourself in English.
That's one of my favorite tips. It might feel a little strange at first, but talking to yourself is a great way to practice speaking without any pressure. You can describe what you're doing, talk about your plans for the day, or even have imaginary conversations.
Exactly. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll feel speaking English out loud. Another tip that can really boost your fluency is something called shadowing. Have you heard of that, Henry?
Yes, I have. Shadowing is when you listen to someone speaking English and repeat what they say as quickly as you can, almost like you're their shadow. It helps improve your pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation.
Right. You can do this with podcasts, YouTube videos, or even TV shows. Just play a short clip, listen carefully, and then try to repeat exactly what you hear. It might be challenging at first, but it's a great way to train your mouth and brain to work together.
That's such a useful technique. And here's another tip that can make a big difference. Find a language partner or join a conversation group. Speaking with real people is one of the best ways to build fluency.
Yes, you can find language partners online or in your local community. And if you're feeling shy or nervous, remember that it's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn.
Exactly. Fluency isn't about being perfect. It's about communicating. And the more you practice, the easier it will get. Another tip I love is to use a language journal to track your progress.
That's a great one. You can use your journal to write about your day in English, note down new words or phrases you've learned, or reflect on your speaking practice. It's a great way to stay motivated and see how far you've come.
Definitely. And speaking of motivation, here's a final tip. Celebrate your small wins. Learning a language is a long journey, so it's important to recognize and celebrate your progress along the way.
Yes, maybe you had your first conversation in English without translating in your head, or maybe you understood a whole podcast episode without subtitles. Whatever it is, take a moment to celebrate. It will keep you motivated to keep going.
Absolutely. So, to recap, here are some actionable tips to help you build fluency habits. 1. Set small, achievable goals. 2. Create an English-speaking environment. 3. Talk to yourself in English. 4. Try the shadowing technique. 5. Find a language partner or conversation group. 6. Keep a language journal. 7. Celebrate your small wins.
That's right. Remember, fluency isn't about being perfect. It's about building small daily habits that help you practice consistently. If you stick with it, you'll be amazed at how much progress you can make.
And in the next part of the episode, we'll talk about some common challenges you might face when building fluency habits and how to overcome them. So stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. So far, we've talked about what fluency really means, why habits are the key to building fluency, and some actionable tips to help you get started. But let's be real, building new habits isn't always easy. There are definitely some challenges that can get in the way.
That's true, Henry. And the good news is, you're not alone. Every language learner faces challenges at some point. What's important is to recognize those challenges and learn how to overcome them. So let's talk about a few common obstacles and what you can do to deal with them.
Great idea. One of the biggest challenges I hear about from English learners is lack of time. People say, "I'm too busy to practice English every day." What advice would you give someone who's struggling with this, Sarah?
That's a common one. My advice is to start small and make use of the time you already have. For example, if you're commuting to work, you can listen to an English podcast. If you're cooking dinner, you can practice shadowing by repeating phrases from a TV show. Even 5 minutes a day is better than nothing.
Exactly. It's all about finding those little pockets of time and turning them into language practice. Another challenge that comes up a lot is fear of making mistakes. This can be a big obstacle, especially for people who want to practice speaking.
Yes, and it's completely normal to feel nervous about making mistakes. But here's the thing. Mistakes are actually a good thing. They're part of the learning process. Every time you make a mistake, you're giving yourself an opportunity to learn and improve.
That's such a great point. One way to overcome this fear is to remind yourself that communication is more important than perfection. Focus on getting your message across, even if your grammar isn't perfect. And remember, most people will appreciate the fact that you're making the effort to speak their language.
Absolutely. Another challenge that can come up is lack of motivation. Sometimes you might feel excited to practice English, but other times you might feel tired, frustrated, or just not in the mood. What can learners do to stay motivated, Henry?
That's a tough one, but there are definitely ways to stay motivated. One strategy is to remind yourself why you're learning English in the first place. Maybe you want to travel, get a better job, or make new friends. Keeping your goals in mind can help you stay focused.
Yes, and it also helps to track your progress and celebrate your small wins. Every time you learn a new word, have a conversation in English, or understand a podcast without subtitles, that's a win, and it's worth celebrating.
Exactly. And here's one last challenge we should talk about. Getting stuck in your comfort zone. Sometimes learners focus too much on reading and listening, and they avoid speaking because it feels uncomfortable.
That's so true. But real fluency comes from stepping outside your comfort zone and actually using the language. So challenge yourself to do something that feels a little bit scary, like joining an online conversation group or recording yourself speaking English.
Yes, it might feel uncomfortable at first, but the more you do it, the easier it will get. And remember, everyone starts somewhere. The important thing is to keep going and not give up.
Exactly. So, to recap, here are some common challenges and how to overcome them. 1. Lack of time. Start small and use the time you already have. 2. Fear of making mistakes. Embrace your mistakes as learning opportunities. 3. Lack of motivation. Keep your goals in mind and celebrate your progress. 4. Stuck in your comfort zone? Take small steps to challenge yourself and try new things.
That's right. Remember, building fluency is a journey, and it's normal to face challenges along the way. The key is to stay consistent, be patient with yourself, and keep moving forward.
Absolutely. And in the final part of today's episode, we'll share some closing thoughts and a quick challenge to help you start building your fluency habits today. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. We're reaching the end of today's episode, but before we wrap up, let's quickly recap what we've talked about and share some key takeaways.
That's right. So today's topic was all about fluency and how it's a habit, not a skill. We started by defining fluency and explaining that it's not about speaking perfectly, but about communicating smoothly and naturally, even if you make mistakes.
Exactly. And then we talked about why habits are the key to fluency. Building small daily habits helps train your brain to think in English, and over time, those habits add up to real progress.
Yes, we also shared some actionable tips to help you build fluency habits, like setting small goals, immersing yourself in English, talking to yourself, and using the shadowing technique. And we encouraged you to celebrate your small wins along the way.
Right. We also discussed some common challenges like lack of time, fear of making mistakes, and getting stuck in your comfort zone, and how to overcome them by staying consistent, embracing mistakes, and taking small steps outside your comfort zone.
So, the key takeaway from today's episode is this. Fluency isn't something you achieve overnight. It's something you build through consistent practice, small daily actions, and a positive mindset. And the best part? Anyone can do it.
Exactly. Remember, fluency is a journey, not a destination. The important thing is to keep going, Stay patient and enjoy the process.
Yes. And before we go, we want to leave you with a quick challenge. Starting today, pick one small habit you can do every day to practice your English. It could be listening to a podcast, talking to yourself for 5 minutes, or reading a short article in English. Whatever it is, keep it small, keep it simple, and most importantly, stick with it.
That's a great challenge, Sarah, and we'd love to hear how it's going. If you try it, let us know by leaving a comment or sending us a message. We're always here to support you on your fluency journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We hope you found today's episode helpful and inspiring. Keep building those fluency habits, and we'll see you next time.
Take care and happy learning. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of the English Learning Podcast. We've covered a lot today: what fluency really means, why it's a habit, and how you can build fluency through small, consistent actions.
That's right. We hope today's discussion gave you some practical tips and motivation to start creating your own English learning habits. Remember, fluency is a journey, and every small step you take brings you closer to your goal.
Absolutely, and we want to leave you with a simple reminder. Don't aim for perfection, aim for progress. Every time you practice, you're improving. So keep going, stay consistent, and trust the process.
And don't forget the challenge we mentioned earlier. Starting today, pick one small habit you can do every day to practice your English. It doesn't have to be big, just something that fits into your daily routine.
We'd also love to hear from you. What habit are you going to start building? Leave us a comment, send us a message, or share your thoughts with us on social media. Your feedback inspires us, and we're here to support you on your journey to fluency.
Yes, and if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to the English Learning Podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also share this podcast with your friends who are learning English. It might just help them too.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Keep building those fluency habits, stay positive, and we'll see you next time for another episode of the English Learning Podcast.
Take care, and as always, happy learning.